We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Welcome to a little bit of history. This is my first show under the auspices and guise of 15 Minutes of Flame. Now, it will take 15 minutes for me to get out what I'm about to share with you, and the show itself is going to evolve. Right now, I'm sitting down and I'm staring right into this video monitor and also this camera, but I'm going to move around at some point. I'll be standing up, and the whole idea here is to just burn and get you info as he clears his nose, as clearly and as quickly as I can on a daily basis. So welcome to the YouTube age, Mr. Phoenix. It's about fucking time. On 15 Minutes of Flame, we're going to cover everything as quickly as possible. It includes politics, it includes sports, it includes weird, strange ephemera, and today we've got all of it, a little bit of all of it. First of all, I want to start off with Mercury Retrograde. We are in Mercury Retrograde, and I barely escaped with my life on Friday at about 5:40 p.m. Now, what's really interesting about this version of Mercury Retrograde is that it started right on my sun. And for all of you neophytes who don't know anything about astrology, it's okay. Mercury was at 29 degrees when it went retrograde. My sun, 29 degrees Virgo. It's kind of a big deal. Also, there was the eclipse happening around my sun, another kind of a big deal. So what we've got going on here is chaos. I pulled out of my apartment at about 5:40. I've got a mosque across the street from my house. That's right, a mosque. And there are literally hundreds and thousands of Muslims that are moving into this area, Oak Hill, Texas, a little sleepy community that's growing in the western part of Austin. And the apartment complex I live in is getting filled with people who are now attending this mosque. I'm pulling out onto the highway, and as I pull out, there are two vans coming out of the mosque, and one of them pulls into the center lane. We got a big center lane in the middle of the road. We've got two lanes going on either side, and there's another minivan that pulls right out in front of me as I'm hitting about 50 miles per hour. And as I'm coming up to this minivan, I mean, it's just almost instantaneous. My life is flashing before my eyes. I've got my kid next to me, and all of a sudden, it's Matrix hour. I hit my brakes, I've got a standard shift, and I put my clutch down, and I swerve, and I fishtail, and I'm looking straight into this guy's eyes, right? He's about 10 feet away from me. And then I just fishtail sideways, and then I whip it back, and I correct. The only problem is I correct into oncoming traffic. So I missed the minivan, but now I'm staring at an SUV, a soccer mom coming straight at me. And then I whip it back into the fast lane, and I avoid her. So in a matter of mere moments, mere seconds, I saw my life flash before me not once, but twice. Welcome to Mercury Retrograde. Well, another person who has experienced a pretty intense Mercury Retrograde is Vladimir Putin's favorite driver. Just overnight, it was announced that his vehicle, one of Vlad's favorite cars to roam around in Moscow, got into a massive accident, and he's dead. And it's not just any accident. If you look at the wreckage and the carnage of the vehicle, this thing looks incredibly planned, incredibly staged, and we are now in a very interesting area because there has been chatter about war with Russia for the last 6 months, and the chatter is getting louder and louder and louder. And clearly, because the Clintons have such a long and detailed death list, we cannot rule them out in this case. They thought perhaps that Vladimir Putin was in the car with his favorite driver. Well, this is not the case. However, it was not a great day for the favorite driver. He's dead. Mercury Retrograde 1, favorite Moscow driver 0. So if you're out there driving around under this Mercury Retrograde, please be careful. And please don't piss Hillary Clinton off. Or if you do, make sure that you have your bases covered and that you can take care of yourself with a private driver, private security. Now, this is a time in America, however, where we are being forced to constrain our thoughts and compress them in such a way that it is almost unnatural, because humans are here to speak. We're here to communicate. We are here to share what's inside of our heart and inside of our mind. And what's been happening is we've been placed in a vice grip, a social vice grip, that makes these things more and more difficult to get out. Why? Because there's social pressure, that's number one, and there's economic pressure, number two. If you want to speak out or you want to speak up, you want to share an opinion that diverges from that which is considered popular, important, and socially correct, you run the risk of alienating your friends, perhaps your wife, perhaps your husband, in some cases, and perhaps even the people that you work with in your career. Whoever thought that having an open mind and an open heart would be considered a political offense? Not even a hard political offense, a soft political offense, where we are the police, we are the jailers, we are the judge, we are the warden of our own lives. This is exactly how the game was set up. 1984 isn't out there, it's in there. It is in your head, and the best thing you can do is to be able to break through and break out of that cell. And how do you do it? You take a risk. You share something that is going to make you and other people uncomfortable. It should be a daily yoga for every one of us, because to do so, we exercise our constitutional rights in order to speak freely. Now, speaking of speaking freely, what about Colin Kaepernick? You know, I've got a really interesting relationship with Colin Kaepernick. I don't know him personally, but a couple of years ago when I was really into sports and astrology, and I still am to a certain extent, I was looking at Colin Kaepernick's chart. I was fascinated by Colin Kaepernick because I knew who he was. I was a 49ers fan, and I watched him playing some games. I said, this guy is going to be big. This guy's going to be something special. So I looked at his chart, and his chart is, well, he's a Scorpio, and I don't have his rising sign. He's a Scorpio with an Aries moon. He's got Mercury in Libra. That Mercury in Libra really drives a sense of social justice, which you can see. The guy is trying to break the mold. You know, when Colin Kaepernick, was first called out for sitting down during the national anthem, I was hard on him. And I'm still a little bit hard on him. But he's trying to speak out. He's trying to find a voice. He's trying to cut against the grain and to some extent be politically incorrect. But he's not doing a very good job because he's confused. What Colin Kaepernick doesn't understand, and what a lot of the social justice warriors don't understand, is what is going on in policing. And I've talked about this numerous times on this show. Our police force are being trained by the IDF. That's right. These are the people that brutalize the Palestinians on a daily basis. These are the people that send the Palestinians back into the Middle Ages on a daily basis. And what's happening? Our police force, our police chiefs, our police captains are going to Israel, and they're being trained by the IDF. And that training translates into a greater sense of brutality here amongst us with our police force. There's a shoot first attitude, a shoot first philosophy now, and there is probably a silent agreement. There is consensus that this is the way it's going to be, and for the most part, they will protect their own. This is the new form and the new style of policing. The other thing that leads into this greater sense of brutality and injustice, and not just for the black community, not just for the Hispanic community, but for everybody, is the fact that the police have been weaponized. They have been weaponized beyond their capacity to be able to protect and serve. Ever since 9/11, the federal government has rewarded local police departments by giving them money so they can buy used equipment from the Middle East. That's right. They can buy used tanks, used rocket launchers, used Kevlar vests, whatever they need, right? Used armored vehicles. And they have been buying this stuff up like crazy. They go to conventions, they find out who's selling what, and they're turning our police force into an army. The next step for our police force is to become nationalized, a nationalized police force. And that can happen on anybody's watch. It could happen on Hillary's watch, it could happen on Donald Trump's watch. So what's happening is that the police force is becoming not just a thorn in the side for Black America, but for everyone. Now, does that mean that there are bad cops out there all across the nation? No, that's not the case. Not yet, because what's happening is that the infiltration of a mindset, of a fascistic mindset, is slowly taking place and slowly moving through our policing all across the country. Now, today, as I speak, what's happening is that the UN, in accordance with the Department of Justice, is now going through every single police force across the country for the Safe Cities Act, which means that there's a coup taking place, that our police force is now being taken over by the UN. So not only is it being nationalized, it is being internationalized. So we're just looking at the tip of the iceberg with policing. And Colin Kaepernick brings up a very good point about it. But unfortunately, he's not somebody who is completely clued in to what's happening both politically and sociologically. He thinks he is, but he's not. And the other thing about Colin Kaepernick that to some extent really bothers me, and anybody that wants to use their public pulpit in order to inform the public and take a stand, is that for the most part, they're wasting their time. Because in order to really take a stand, in order to make the most effective use of that time, the most effective use of the burn in that spotlight, there should be one issue and one issue only. And it has to do with the date that's coming up just 4 days from now. And that's 9/11. Because if Colin Kaepernick stood up for 9/11, if Colin Kaepernick said there's something wrong about 9/11 and that we need to go back and look at what really happened because our government is lying to us, I would stand up and I would applaud him and I would sing his praises every single day. I would talk about him every single day. And it doesn't have to be Colin Kaepernick. It could be George Clooney. Ha! It could be Kiefer Sutherland. Whoever, right? I don't care. I would talk about them because it needs to be talked about. And what happens when it does get talked about? Well, you don't get Colin Kaepernick-like treatment, right? Your jersey sales do not go up because Colin Kaepernick is really taking place.
90 seconds.
Colin Kaepernick is really, what he's really doing is he's really demonstrating in a way that represents low-hanging fruit. It's easy. If Colin Kaepernick decided that he was going to talk about 9/11 and he wanted to get to the bottom of it, do you think Barack Obama would be calling from China and supporting him and supporting his free speech? Do you think there would be a rallying cry where people are coming together to support Colin Kaepernick and kneeling down the way that Colin Kaepernick has kneeled down in front of the flag? I doubt it very much. Just ask Rashard Mendenhall what happens when you talk about things that are uncomfortable. Rashard Mendenhall played running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And after Osama bin Laden was captured and killed, he spoke out about the gratuitous violence and the celebration of war. He also spoke out a little bit about 9/11, that things aren't always the way that we see them. And what happened to Rashard Mendenhall? He lost all of his sponsorships. He was vilified. What about his free speech? You see, free speech only really counts if you're talking about things that are within a frame of reference that isn't too controversial. And I don't care where you stand on the Kaepernick situation. What he spoke about and what he shared and what he theoretically laid his career on the line for isn't controversial at all. It's something that every American should be talking about. but doesn't. That's your 15 minutes of flame.